Hey there, everyone. I have created a presentation celebrating Black History Month, focusing on the Harlem Renaissance and the Black artists from which who made history. So the Harlem Renaissance happened um, just about a whole century ago. So the first one we are going to look at is Augusta Savage, born 1892, died 1962. So she was born and started creating art by playing with clay that she found in her hometown in Green Cove Springs, Florida. She came from a religious family, and her father was a minister who didn't really appreciate her going into art. But at the age of 23, she relocated with her family where she couldn't find any more natural clay to work with. So she visited a potter's studio. And at that studio, she was given some clay and she created a group of figures and entered it into a county fair. The superintendent of the fair enjoyed her work so much that he encouraged her to study art despite the racism and the sexism that was present during that day. So she decided to go to Cooper Union. And in 1923, when she was attending Cooper Union, she won a scholarship to attend an art school in France, but was denied actually because of her race. The school in France said, quote, "It would not be wise to have a colored student, as complications would arise, and the student would suffer most from these complications." So then just contemplate that. The school denied her admission because they didn't want her to deal with complications, but obviously there's a lot of issues with that. So all of this was occurring in the 1920s and during the Jim Crow era, but she alerted the press and it made headlines. She had people like W.E. Du Bois write to the school to fight for her admission, and she was finally accepted into the school in France in 1929. She became known for creating sculptural portraits of people in her community as well as affluent African American leaders in the community. This is a sculpture by her by Augusta Savage called Gammon, which is now on view at the Cleveland Museum of Art. Her most famous work is this piece titled "The Harp." It was commissioned. Actually, she was the only artist to receive a commission for the New York World Fair. This was in 1939. So she created this harp, and it's, as you can see, it is uh, the shape of a harp, but created of a choir, which represents the strings. It's a children's choir to represent the strings. The sounding board here is the supposed to be representative of the hand of God, and then the pedal here is a kneeling man with a sheet of music. Um, this piece, The Harp, was inspired by a poem by James Weldon Johnson called Lift Every Voice and Sing, which was written in 1900, the year 1900, and is known or was known as the Negro National Anthem. So she made this harp from that inspiration of that poem, and 5 million people got to see this with their own eyes at New York's World Fair. But she, as I said, was the only one who was commissioned for this World Fair to make a piece. And she received $360 for it, which probably at that time was like $3,000 to $4,000. But the story of this harp is so interesting. the sculptural harp broke at the end of the fair. It was accidentally bulldozed over during the cleanup when the fair was over. So the piece doesn't exist anymore. I think that she made a few small replicas of it, but the original is has been ruined. So this is her in a quote that says, "I have created nothing really beautiful, really lasting, but if I can inspire one of these youngsters to develop the talent I know they possess, then my monument will be in their work." So this quote relates to her legacy because she did establish um, a vanguard club, which was like a left wing salon for artists. She also established the Savage Studio for Arts and Crafts, and she successfully lobbied for inclusion of Black artists in her studio. So she definitely now, and she now also, or till her death in the 60s, she worked with children. So, like many artists, she was also an educator, and she also really fought to make sure there was inclusion for her Black students. The next artist is Selma Burke, born 1900, died in 1995. She described herself as a people sculptor, and she also discovered art playing with clay that she found in her natural environment. And she created portraits of prominent African American leaders like Duke Ellington and Booker T. Washington. And she was one of the many artists and uh, amongst other people like artists and songwriters and soldiers and other notables who fled from the United States to escape racism, and fled to Paris in the 20th century. But at that time, she came back to the United States because of the presence of the Nazis. So I can understand. I mean, obviously, that's very sad to feel not safe in either country. But when she returned, she was commissioned to carve a portrait of Franklin Delano Roosevelt for the US dime. And she, it's, this is her carving the portrait actually out of clay, like a relief. And this is the actual dime as we know it. The dime, as we also know it, has a signature on it by John R. Sinnock. And he actually receives credit for this portrait as we know it. Her image, this one here, is only recognized for its inspiration, and it was supposed to be modeled for the final image, which Sinnock gets credit for. Even if Sinnock did use his own image, there is barely any perceptible alterations because of just, I think it's obvious that like the jutting chin and the angled forehead are the same. These distinctions are clear. She was able to do this portrait by winning a national competition, excuse me, and she met the president and sketched him over the course of 2 days for a total of 4 hours. And the relief was debuted in 1945, which was the same year that FDR passed away. So her legacy definitely is she was awarded the Women's Caucus for Art Lifetime Achievement Award. Her last major sculpture was of Martin Luther King, which stands in Marshall Park, Charlotte, North Carolina today. And her artwork is displayed at many museums still today, including the Smithsonian. The next artist, also from the Harlem Renaissance, is Gladys Bentley. She wasn't a visual artist, but she was a performer, born 1907, died 1960. In the 1920s, her career blossomed and totally skyrocketed after a performance at Harry Hansberry's Clam House in New York. She was Black, lesbian, and a crossdresser, and always was backed up by drag queen performers as well. Her signature look was this look as we see right now with a white top hat and a white tux. So she played piano. She was a great singer. She wrote her own a book about herself. She had pretty raunchy lyrics, and she was just kind of sort of a force to be reckoned with, as she had a lot of energy and would noticeably flirt with other women in the crowd. And I actually have a video that I pulled up so we can watch her perform a little bit.
And you're Gladys Bentley, is that right? Yes. I'm sorry to have neglected you, Gladys, but it isn't often we get a charming lad from Guatemala. That's right. Now, where are you from, Glad?
Well, I'm from Port of Spain, Trinidad.
Do you have a job, Gladys?
Yes, I'm an entertainer. I sing and play for a living in nightclubs all over the country. And I just finished a book called If This Be Sin.
Well, what is it about? Is it about geometry?
My life story.
Life story. You're the Gladys Bentley.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought your name sounded vaguely familiar. Gladys, how long have you been singing in nightclubs around the country?
For about 40 years.
What kind of songs do you sing?
Well, I do all kind of songs.
Could you sing something for us right now?
Well, I have about 500 on hand. What would you like to hear?
Could you sing the whole 500? I don't care. Sing anything you'd like. What would you like to sing?
I could do, if you have a small piano or something, I could do Them Their Eyes.
Suppose we had a large piano, what could you do?
Well, I could do maybe somebody else's eyes.
Well, NBC throws their money around like glue, and we just happen to have a portable piano backstage. George. Well, what are you going to sing, Gladys? Maybe the orchestra could join in.
I'm going to try to do Them Their Eyes.
Them Their Eyes. Watch that stool there, huh?
I'm trying. That'll be something. I loved you the first time I looked into them their eyes. Got a cute little way of flirting with them their eyes. You make me oh so happy. You make me blue. All in love, stalling on a great big way for you. Jumping, you started jumping with them their eyes. Watch out, brown eyes, if you're wise. They sparkle, they bubble. Get you in a whole lot of trouble, yes, baby. Them their eyes.
Yeah, that video is really great. I think it's just kind of like a whole lot of fun. Oh, sorry.
And you're Gladys.
But yeah, as you can see, she wasn't wearing the tux as she was known for. She's obviously, dressed up in a little bit more of a feminine way in this video. But, she definitely had that sound that was really popular at the time, which I personally actually enjoy quite a bit. And this, since this was a performance for TV, which wasn't really common for performers at that time for every performance, the way that it's so different now with phones always being on us all the time. But that maybe perhaps that's why she was dressed up in a more feminine way, to just make it easier for people on TV to watch. But regardless, I mean, her legacy definitely exists in, being a Black queer performer who was widely accepted, appreciated, and rejoiced. in a time that it was not only there was a lot of racism happening, and also the struggle of being black, but on top of that being a woman, but on top of that also being queer. So there's a lot uh, that made her, sift through a lot of adversity, but she still was very respected and talented, and obviously she made it onto a TV show. She wrote a book about her life, as I said before, but I think I read a little bit that she had a hard time with her identity too, which, I think in that time, like, she was just brave, right, for being all of these things and on in stage in front of everyone to see. But there was a time when she, like, set up a photo shoot of herself looking very domesticated and not wearing her tuxedo, but wearing um feminine clothing and stuff. And I think that, I don't know, maybe she suffered some backlash or something, but also, I think identity tends to change over the course of our lives too. So maybe she enjoyed performing masculine with a tuxedo, and then at a certain time also wanted to express her more feminine side as well. Okay, and then the last artist of the presentation is William Edmondson. He's born 1874 to died in 1951. He was born to two former slaves in the late 1800s, and he is actually the first African American to receive a solo exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art. He didn't receive any formal training in art, like he didn't go to art school or anything like that. Later in life, he just kind of had this epiphany and felt very inspired by God, and felt like the spirit of God had brought him to start sculpting. And in his words, his artwork were the word of Jesus speaking his mind inside of his mind. So yeah, he was an outside artist who learned his trade as a student, as a tombstone carver. I think that's where he first put his hands on the material. He was also a janitor. So this is a example of one of his pieces. It's called Critter. It's carved limestone, and he had obvious technical skills. And although his work appears to be very like childlike and simple, um, I think that he worked very much within symbolism. So his work in that sense can be really fun to read into. So he would carve limestone, and he would get his materials from unconventional sources like demolished houses, and his studio space was in his front yard. So this is a picture of many of his arts on view. Um, I don't think this was at the moment. I think this is at a different gallery. But we can go to this video really quick.
These is miracles I can do. Can't nobody do them but me. Some people said the man was crazy, but that wasn't my way of thinking. I never met, and I still haven't met, anybody who seemed that much in possession of himself. He was much more astute than we give him credit for.
Mr. Edmondson made stone speak.
The reason I became a sculptor is largely due to Edmondson.
His journey wasn't for him alone. His journey was encouragement for everyone that was going to come along behind him.
Thanks to his talent and vision, William Edmondson became the first African American to earn a solo exhibition at the world-renowned Museum of Modern Art in 1937. The modernists were predisposed to notice certain things. They were able to look at Edmondson's work and noticed its economy, its forthrightness and straightforwardness. The 62-year-old self-taught tombstone carver was a most unlikely choice in a most unlikely time and place.
Nashville was as segregated as any city in South Africa at the height of apartheid.
Most people in this country say there was no such thing as black art. Blacks did not have a creative bone in their body.
The notion was that this was white folks' business.
The struggles that he went through paved the way for a lot of artists like myself and my counterparts to be able to have an easier path.
What Edmondson gave the world was a two-way street. Look within my soul and let me open your soul.
Little becomes much when you place it in the master's hands.
William, what are you doing? And who are those monuments for? They're for my heavenly daddy. And I'm doing the work of the Lord.
So that was a little short for a bigger documentary about Edmondson. But yeah, I don't know, he just sort of seems like a really amazing person, to just, one day wake up, decide to do art because he felt so moved by his relationship to God, and then ends up creating this like huge body of work with very little resources by just accessing the world around him, just leftovers from demolished houses, as I said before, and then being the first African American to be shown in the MoMA and having so much recognition is just so inspiring. And obviously, he's touched a lot of different artists and moved a lot of artists, to be open. And then I just wanted to talk about this last piece that he did. This one on the left here called The Boxer. And this was sculpted after this famous boxer, Joe Louis. So you can see a really similar kind of stance and gesture. And this piece, The Boxer, is still making history today. It's worth $250,000 after being sold at a Christie's Outsider art sale. So it actually went down in history as the most expensive outsider art ever sold. Of course, this did happen after his death, which often happens to many different artists. The value of their art goes up after they die. And so, yeah, as an outsider, an outsider artist is someone without a formal education in art, someone who is self-taught, and above all, I think like someone who's a visionary, someone who was born with a vision and needs to create it. So that is William Edmondson. And then we're going to leave it with a quote by my favorite, Dr. Maya Angelou. I've learned that you shouldn't go through life with a catcher's mitt on both hands. You need to be able to throw something back. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed learning about these artists of the Harlem Renaissance, and I hope you found them as inspirational as I do. All right, take care.